Welcome back to CrossTalk, the podcast where we tackle crucial and sometimes controversial topics and where that young adults are asking. And we like to bridge the generational gap by bringing in people of all stages, ages, and to bring in their wisdom. So back with us today, we have Karen Maree, David Stansbury, and Mark Stafford. Give yourself, there we go. Okay. Only Mark's excited today.
As per usual.
As per usual. So last week we tackled, Jesus being the reason for the holiday season, his sacrifice and all that it means for us as believers, and even what it could mean for those of us who aren't believers. And today is actually, when this goes live, it'll actually be the 1st of January 2025. Our timing was so great. Every second week wins. And so we've decided to tackle the age-old saying of New Year, New Me, because, everyone decides to be a new person come the new year. But they generally don't. So today we'll be talking about the new year, same me. And we'll be looking at what sustainability looks like going into the new year. Resolutions, habits, goals, and all of those things. So the first question I have for you guys is, what is one of the most ridiculous New Year's resolutions you have made? You didn't have to have kept it, but just one you've made, and you're like, actually, what was I thinking?
And the long silence. We got to remember this one.
I remember once I said that I wanted to gain weight. I tried though. Throughout that whole year I tried. But I didn't keep it because, I don't know, it never worked. But I remember that was just one silly one that I can think of.
Okay.
I think I tried the coffee one as well. I thought I'd because of my wife said, I'm a bit, what's the word, hyperactive.
Okay.
The ADHD syndrome and other things. And she said, well, why not have a look at the cafe thing? So then I made the statement, I will give up coffee. This is my New Year's resolution. Didn't go well.
How long?
In fact, it's like, normally I have a struggle to land a plane, but this one landed very quickly. It didn't work. The plane landed back to caffeine on the 2nd of January. Oh, sure. Anyway.
I don't think I've ever really been much of a resolution person, just because I knew I probably wouldn't keep it. And so the perfectionist in me is like, why would I intentionally set myself up to fail? So I think my longest resolution was an accidental one, that it wasn't a conscious thing, but I did like a 30-day challenge, like exercise challenge. I'm like, well, if I can do 30 days, then maybe I can do 60 days. And if I can do 60 days, I can do a term. And if I've done 3 months, that's like double that, and it's half a year. And so it went till I did it every day for 4 years. So, yeah. But generally, I'll think about it, but then I can't decide on it because I need to know for certain that I'm not going to fail. Yeah.
I was going to say, because in my mind, you're the queen of like holding habits. Like your Duolingo streak is...
It's pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I've seen it. Mine is like negatives currently. Okay. And then still staying on the topic of resolutions, what was one you made this last year? So 2024, that you actually kept to, if you did make any. Karen's already answered.
Yeah. I don't think I made one this year, to be honest.
I think I'd have to second that. I think I've learned from the number of crash landings. So I just don't think about making resolutions. It's something that needs to have happened. If the minute that you come out there and say, now I'm going to make a resolution, it's just a feel good thing. You think I'm going to start this year off well. But yeah, I think the statement you used earlier about the same me, it's, unless something has moved and shifted in you, and it becomes part of your life, you can make a resolution for all you want. It's not going to do. And I am that kind of person. I'm very, what's the word? In the moment. I'm going to do it. And so I've learned, don't do it. It's just not good. Yeah, so I would have to second you. There are no resolutions.
I'm going to have to third you.
Okay, brother.
No, I also don't think I had many. I think my year started with a crash, boom, and a bang. So I had to, a lot of things happening in my life. So the last thing on my mind was New Year's resolutions, put it that way. I don't think I made any this year.
Okay. And then coming back to what you said, David, about the just the need that people feel to actually make one. Why do you think that pressure does exist? Like, why do you think there's this pressure to suddenly become like a new version of yourself overnight?
Well, being the oldest person here, I think it's the age-old thing. I think we're conditioned by society, we're conditioned by the world, the voices, and everybody talks about the new me, or the new this, or our new reality, to use a saying, during COVID, our new reality. And the reality, and we I think people believe this notion that you change from the outside in. But though many of us know that having done that, tried that in your life, it doesn't work. But I think the reason why, personally, why I think people go for that, and there's the pressure to have a resolution, to change. Yes, it's the feel good, but I think it's this notion in society, you change your outer world, even if it's a lie.
Yeah.
Somehow that says something. I'm a new person.
Yeah.
That's what I believe or think or see.
I think something about the new year makes you think of a new start, and a lot of people aren't happy with who they are. And so they think, well, if I can just do this, then, and it's almost like a form of bargaining, that if I can get this right, then my life will be better. And so if I can change some of the external factors, then maybe internally it'll feel better. But I think it's rooted more in a lack of content or peace in who I am. Some people are just by nature very growth orientated and very driven and love a challenge. But I think if we were to generalize and look at the average person, it's like this wishful hope that if I get this right, then I'll be better.
Yeah.
It's putting it onto a thing rather than sometimes at the expense of doing the work on the inside.
Yeah, I think for me it would be with growing up being a PK, we used to move around a lot. So with moving, I found that you have that ability. You have the chance to say, this is a new me, so I can change whoever I am. So I remember going into, I think it hit me the most when going out of primary school into high school. From grade 6, we moved in grade 6, and then grade 7, my senior year in primary school was in a new place. So you have this ability to be like that movie, The New Guy, you're the new guy. So you can reimagine your life. And I think for me, like the New Year's resolution is that kind of feeling, but you don't necessarily have the moving part. So you try to change the external to hopefully change what's happening in your life. So I think for me, that's where that kind of mentality or that pressure came from, that idea of I've seen it happening in my life with this moving, and now bringing it across to my social interaction and my church life and growth with God and all that stuff becomes this kind of question of, I can reinvent myself because I don't like who I am.
Yeah. I feel it's safe to throw the disclaimer out there now that I didn't do my hair. To change. I'm still the same person, guys. I'm sitting there, everyone's mentioning changing the outside. So I'm like, that's not why. I'm still here, still me. But what are some healthy habits or ways you found that enables your like sustainable like change and growth? So like Karen, you, like I said, you were like, if I can do 30, I can do 60. But I feel like not everyone is that way. So what are some other ways you've kind of taught yourself to build healthier habits and ways of seeing ways to change or to grow?
I think for starters, I probably mention this all the time, the values word, but I think, if the change that you're looking for is something that's in line with your values, then you're going to have a more sustained, the habit's more likely to be sustained because it fits with who you are. If it's a case of like, I'm an introvert, and if my New Year's resolution is, I am going to go out there and be the social butterfly, well, it's not how I'm wired. It's not how I'm energized. And it's not even necessarily in line with my values of being like transparent and authentic if I'm having to put on a persona in order to try and like fit in or see that my life is going to be better. So there has to be some kind of, I think, natural, healthy connection with what drives you, because that is, will be a motivator. And realistic expectations. So I want to get fit. Well, what does that mean? I'm going to sign up for gym. Well, you can sign up for gym, but what's the plan? Yeah. So having something that can be put into a workable plan, or else like small bite-sized goals that you can achieve a sense of success. Because when people don't experience success, then they get despondent and they give up. But small successes over a long period of time are more likely to lead to lasting change. I mean, again, going back to that example, 30 days, I did it. That felt really cool. Okay, I can do 30 days, which means I can do another 30. So I showed myself that a little bit, not I'm going to exercise every day for a year. It was in small, tangible goals, and then the reward or the benefit or the habit that just formed made it easier for it to stay in play.
I think a couple of things, obviously very similar to you. I think many of us, we lose the significance of what you've used it, but I'll just use a different phrase. You need an easy win. Because if you have a fail or a loss in the beginning of let's say your change or intended change, you get demoralized, you get discouraged. So I'd say for me, look at things that would for you be an easy win, like a smaller change that you were saying that brings immediate results, that works more on motivation and encouragement to get you into that space. And I think also for me is to take out comparison. I think many people's decisions today, and including resolutions, is always based on being like somebody or having what someone else has, or freedom. It's not freedom for me, but I want to be free like them, or I want to have that space, or I want to have that physique, but it's not as such for me. So I think if you can take comparison out, and it's something, if the Lord has revealed that to you, or it's something that you feel convicted about in terms of you personally, do it with no reference to anybody else. And I think that's important, because comparison blurs everything for me personally. And I think also some of the things, because many of us, a large portion of the world seeks to please, seeks to be what others want you to be. So my wife is always you can hear I will refer a lot to her, because I've learned from her, and she's an absolute gem, and I wouldn't be where I am without her. But she always asks me, did anything happen today that filled your tank? Did you do anything for yourself? That thing. So for me, I would say when you are looking for easy wins and resolutions that really build, try and also look for something that fills your tank, not someone else's tank. Not because it's good for, I'm not saying don't do it for others, but some of the best ones to start with is deal with you. And when you start feeling better about you, and when you start, it fills my tank, I'm a better person to deal with, and I'm much better than to deal with the other resolutions that impact others. Just a few things.
Yeah, I'm going to take a strong silent pause quickly. No, I'm joking. I'm just trying to think. I think if I remember the question now, it's been a while.
Good one, Mark.
Just the idea of like what pushes us towards those things, right? So I think for me, if I have to go back to like my studies in business management and stuff like that, I realized that even in organizational growth and how we move as a unit, kind of reflects back to how we move as individuals. And I think the biggest thing that interferes or persuades or pushes growth or pushes movement to a certain direction is your core value. And I think for me, as me personally, and as Christians, we kind of have this core value of like that song that was released this year, that Made for More. And we feel like maybe we feel like, oh, I'm not achieving what I should be achieving. And therefore we push ourselves to kind of get to that place of saying, hey, I need to do more. I'm made for more. I need to do more. And I think what happens is in our conversations and in our thoughts, we have this moment where we say, well, I think it's Craig Rochelle who says that we move in the direction of our strongest thoughts. So then you come to these moments where we get to the new year and we're like, okay, well, our strongest thoughts are made for more, made for more. Okay, so what does that look like going forward? And if we don't have a clear value in the sense of what we truly see in ourselves or what we want to see in ourselves, well, then we can be swayed by anything. And because as Christians we feel like that we have made for more, then we push ourselves to anything. So I think that pressure comes from an internal place of knowing or thinking that we need more or need to do more or need to find more to do, instead of just a place of saying, okay, I know who I am, and therefore I am doing this for God or for the community around me or for the development of what God's calling me to. So then it changes the pressure, if I can put it that way. Mm-hmm. I guess if it puts that way.
I like how you keep looking at...
Yeah, because I'm trying to get the confirmation from the senior pastor.
Really, I've got it. Just do it like that, then it's landed.
And then if we had to look at two words, growth versus change. Firstly, what does that bring to mind? Like if you just had to hear those two words, like what is the difference in it, first of all?
Karen, this is your question.
I feel like I need to have a really profound answer and correct answer. But like if you're asking what comes into my mind,
yes.
For me, growth is moving into what isn't yet there. So if you think of like a plant that's growing, that you plant a seed and then it sprouts and then it comes above the ground and then, new branches and leaves and flowers and stuff come. Mm-hmm. So it's like moving towards something that is, not yet reached. But I think change is moving away from something that there's that term, it no longer serves you. But I think people only change when the conditions to remain the same become more uncomfortable than the risk and the discomfort of what change brings. So I think growth, we're inherently wired to want to grow as people. We're not when it comes to change. Change is really hard for people to do, which is why we get stuck into ruts, which is why it can be so hard to maintain New Year's resolution, because it requires that ongoing, sometimes often low reward, because you've got to fight through the suck in order to achieve the change. So it's changing things that have been ingrained and creating new ways of thinking and behaving and habits and stuff, which is all good, which ultimately leads to growth. But growth somehow seems more exciting and simpler.
I think I've always learned and just, feeding on what you were saying, that change for the sake of change is a negative. And I'm talking personally, and the link to growth is if change is motivated by the desire to grow, change becomes positive. So for me, the relationship is change is powerful, but it's what motivates change. Mm. It's the reason for the change. A lot of people associate, to use an example, as a Christian, let's say, for example, when you meet Jesus, people always think, now everything's going to change. But that's half the story. Mm. The story is you want to change when you find Jesus is the reason, and he changes your life. So for me, is going to what Mark was saying. See, Mark, I'm affirming you there, brother. There's the sense is growth is inspired by the desire that, as a Christian, Jesus wants more for me. I want to grow into Christ, so I want to become like him. I want to move further down the road with him. And then when he speaks to me, I want to change. So, and even if you take it out of the Christian circle, it's the same. What is the goal? What do you believe you're called to? What are you reaching for? Once that is clear, I believe change is necessary, but with reference to the goal, and that's the growth. It's the growing me, extending myself, becoming who God wants me to be, who God's called me to be. And I found that's the most productive change. I've known the path of destructive change, and let's just change for the sake of changing. Change is good. Change is, that's what the world's telling you. Change yourself, be a better you. No, it's what motivates. It's what I'm called to. And then that change has a reason and a purpose. Wow. And then it leads to transformation. That's another big word. Yeah. Big word for a small guy. Now we bring Mark into it, you see?
The small guy part. Wow. I think if I had to put it in a way, I think that for me, the difference between the two is that they aren't really truly different. I think they kind of connected, if I can put it that way. Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, please. But the way I'm thinking about it, like change, or growth is a consequence of change, in the sense of we change because of how we've developed. You're not going to address the person the one way that were afraid to maybe address. You finally address them, and then you reach a point where now, okay, because of this interaction, I know how to address them in future. So you grow from that, and then you change the way that you do things. So I find that kind of, it connects the two. But I also know that there is a very big difference between the two. Whereas growth is a consequence of change. So we change because of what we do, and therefore we grow and develop in how we do things. And change is something that we have to constantly work on. Just like a plant doesn't stop after it sprouts. It constantly needs to grow roots. It constantly needs to do stuff. So change is constant. But it's the way that change interacts with our growth is important, because a tree that is growing but doesn't grow below the ground, well, then it falls over at the slightest wind. So we are as Christians called to change and to growth, but we are called to doing both in the correct way. And sometimes in the world that we live in, we called for that instant gratification. Even AI, I realized, has been a total answer to instant gratification for me, because it's like, oh, I don't know, and we ask. So then you get those answers. But I think that it does undermine the way that we then make decisions later on, because we want the instant answer, we want the instant gratification, and therefore it affected the way that we changed or the way that we've grown and developed. So yeah, I think they're connected in a way. But also they're different actions. But yeah, the one does influence the other.
I think I would agree with you. I was thinking now of like the good old teen movies where there's the makeover scene, and I think I was 16 when I just got so tired of being pigeonholed as the PK and people saying, you can't say that, do that, wear that, whatever, because your dad's your dad's a minister. And I was like, I'm my own person and I can do what I want to do and I'm going to show you. And I remember cutting off my hair, dyeing it, getting, extra piercings and a tattoo. Cause I was like, what can I do that's going to be a change where I'm not going to end up like pregnant, dead, or in jail, or an addict, So the new wardrobe, the new hair, the new whatever, it looked different. So I didn't look the same as what I did the day before, but I was still the same on the inside. Mm-hmm. And what you were saying about the why, or what you're striving, it was to change people's perception of who I was, not necessarily growing as a person. And so, yeah, the growth is when it's, not so much worrying about how is this change going to make people see me, but what is it going to take for me to grow into a person that like I respect or I want to be around? Yeah.
So if you had to become your like 21-year-old self, so put yourself back in those shoes.
Going too long ago for me.
Thanks,
Mark is pushing 40, so it's been a while. How would you advise the 20-year-old version of yourself to balance that, or to walk that balance between growth and change? Like, how would you encourage them to like not drastically fall to one or the other?
I think there must be, I mean, now I've got to go the furthest back, of course. So,
Of course.
so
That's why you answered first.
Thanks very much, Mark, because you basically set me up there by referring to your short distance. So I was a long distance runner. So if you look at yourself at 21 and what you would say to yourself now looking back, in looking at those things is, I think I always grew up, and the difference is I always grew up knowing that, that change was costly. So I would always believe I had to change, and it's weighing up cost. And but I don't think the 21 me then, 30 something years ago, would have understood goal, as in terms of growth, growing up, growing into the person that I was made to be or that God called me to be. And so I would certainly be saying to myself, wrestle with it. I would certainly be saying to myself, be patient. I would certainly say to myself, don't be afraid to risk. Don't be afraid to press into areas and saying, is this where I'm meant to be? Is this what God is calling me to? In other words, I'm saying for me, and I mean, it may be different to others, but find out, do you want to grow? Why do you want to grow? What's the dream about growth, growing up, becoming, maturing, growing more fully into who God made you to be? And once you get comfortable with that and you get a vision and a revelation of that, then you reach for it. And when you reach for it, you want to change. And I think that's, for me, the thing I never got as a 21-year-old is this whole thing about desire. There was always, I could do, but sometimes desire, will, intention wasn't always in the right place. So a lot of my changes were misguided, misinformed, certainly wrongly motivated. So I would want to be saying to my young self, don't be afraid to have the tension, change and growth. Don't be afraid to wrestle. Don't be afraid to seek. Give yourself time to find out I'm ministering to people right now, a lot of young people who are saying, I believe I'm called, but I don't know what I'm called to. And in the end, they're weighing cost. So for me, that's what I would be saying. Give time. Don't you want to live in the moment, but you also want to realize that God's every moment builds into his growth journey for the rest of your life. Enjoy the moment, cherish, be willing to change, but constantly ask God to give you the big picture, growth. Because then that would excite. And particularly just that last point about if we don't want to fail, if that pressure is there not to fail, if the pressure is there as a grow up, man, but still to be a child at 50, still to have fun, still to see life as an adventure. Change is in its right context. If it's an adventure, if it's a journey, and we're never fully going to get there, then I think change becomes a joy. Sorry, saying too much.
No, you're doing well. I think for me, the one thing that comes to mind is that scripture. I think it's Paul. Please, if I'm wrong here, I need your help here. I think this was all things are acceptable, but not all things are beneficial.
Correct.
And I think that as Christians, we look at those statements, even as a 21-year-old or thinking back to when I was 21, that kind of thought or mentality wasn't there. I just saw everything as doable. I could care less about the beneficial part. It was all about the adventure and the activity of going ahead and doing something rather than thinking about what is the after effects of this going to look like. I think, so for me, I think the wisdom of knowing to slow down does come after the experience in a sense. So I think for me, I would say it's okay to make mistakes at this point of your life. It's not saying that it's all good, but I'm saying in the sense that don't beat yourself up when you at that point and you think that you've messed up. I think for me, going back is going to myself and saying, it's okay. You've learned something from this. It's not the end of the world, and it's not the end of God's calling for your life. It's just a matter of you've messed up. You take responsibility, but then you ultimately get to a place where you can say, but God, you can still use me. So it's realizing that I am worth more than my last mistake. I think for me. Yeah.
It's pretty profound, brother.
I like sitting next to you.
Did you just say I'm joking after that?
No. No, you're on the opposite side of the room. You did not hear that.
I'll go back and listen.
That's me.
I think I would want to say to myself, just like, be gentle to yourself, little one. I don't know if you know this Adele song. Is it Go Easy?
Yeah.
Easy on You? Whatever. Makes me cry every single time I listen to that song because it's like I'm talking to my younger self, you know? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was trying so hard to just grow up and do it right and perfect. And I was so intense. I mean, I'm still intense, but less intense, I think, than I was then. And so the fails were bigger fails, just even emotionally, like the hurdles to get over when you've set up this idea of either where I'm supposed to be at 22 years old, at 25 years old, at 30 years old, like I'm supposed to have it all together. And as a believer and a leader in ministry and that type of thing, like the self-inflicted pressure to have to be fully formed. I didn't give myself grace for the process of formation. So I think, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, like now you're a new believer, that's it. It's all supposed to be there. But you still have to walk out the process of discovery and learning and journey. And I think so often the disillusionment and the shame of I'm not where I thought I should be. I don't even know where I'm going. I think of friends when Phoebe's like, I don't have what plan? I don't even have a pla. That this, you know, that we have to know before we know. And then the disappointment and how many people fall away from the kingdom because either they don't feel worthy or they're just so despondent in that it hasn't all come together for them in this like amazing claim your future way. So, you know, go easy.
Yeah. So keeping that in mind and like the other words we've kind of heard, like patience, long distance, things like that, how would you incorporate, like what practical advice now would you kind of give to your 21-year-old self, okay, in terms of like mindfulness and, you know, how to mindfully set yourself up for that like track of change and growth?
Practical is always hard because it's I think for me to answer this, I'd have to go back to my 21, where I thought, okay, practical advice was not something I looked for. Even I would rather go for the impractical because it was more out there and you were putting yourself at risk in a sense. But I think for the young people that we minister to now in church and things, the practical advice is just, it's okay to have those conversations. Talk to someone. I think having a mentor would help so much. If I just had someone I could talk to, besides my parents, although I love them and love what they do, is just having someone that's outside of your immediate context to have a conversation with and to talk things through. It's great because it opens you up to a different perspective. I think that would be the one piece of advice if I had to give to someone, it would be that, just to seek advice, good counsel would be one thing that I would say.
Yeah, I must ditto that in the sense that one of the things I realized today, there were no such things as life coaches in those days. The concept of mentoring wasn't really a well-known concept. So we kind of, and I think particularly, you know, I'm talking about now 34 years ago. But what I'm saying in that respect is I would agree with you today is because even now being married to Lindy, you know, these 30 years, I realize having someone in your life who's straight, who listens to you, but helps you look at perspective, gain a perspective, and perspective takes time. And we just said it earlier. And your view is important, but it's not the only view.
Yeah.
So in other words, enlarge your vision. Get someone who can help stretch your vision, your outlook. What are you seeing? So I would agree with you. Whether you call it a mentor, a life coach, certainly someone that you're accountable to. You know, someone that's really good. A really good list, someone who asks really good questions. You know, years ago they had people that were trained in this course of listening. But I think reflecting back, because I don't think many of us, when I grew up, we didn't do enough of that. So practical advice is this reflecting back, because so often it's all here.
Yeah.
But this is valuable. This is precious. This is you. You know, but someone needs to help you get it out. You know, it can't all just stay up there. It's all muddled. And then we start making irrational decisions. But someone, like I think you said it earlier, someone that helps you walk it out. So very much someone who journeys with you, a life coach, a mentor, certainly someone that keeps you accountable to the practical outworkings, you know, because God gives you a dream. He does put something in. He puts something in your mind and your heart, but sometimes you need someone to help you understand, discern, reflect. What is it that you're actually seeing? What is it actually that's in your heart?
Yeah.
So that you really live out and go after that dream. Yeah.
I think journaling is another really helpful tool. Trust the therapist to bring up journaling. But again, because it helps make clear what is floating around in your brain, to get the dreams out on paper, and then to look at that and critically evaluate it and go, okay, well, what is doable and reasonable now? And what is a dream? Like a dream is often you have to wait for those dreams to be fulfilled, and that it's okay. Just the fact that the dream is birthed is that in itself, or is, you know, that you're able to articulate the dream, is good. I think if I think back to my 20s, if I was to put a word over it, I think a lot of it was restless. There was a restlessness because I didn't know where I was supposed to be. How do I know when I've landed? Am I in the right place? And I don't think it's that uncommon now for that restlessness to be there, which means when you're so consumed by all the like what ifs and should I's and what am I called to and how will I know when we can't always celebrate, and we can't always find joy, and we can't always bring the fun in because we think that, you know, again, it's that intensity, and whether it's in our future, in our relationships, seeking out a partner, whether it's in our spiritual walk, in what we think we're supposed to look like or what the church is supposed to look like, everything is just like intense. And it's okay to also, you know, here it is, I can see it. Now let me just walk away from it a little bit and carry on living too, because I mean, it can become all consuming.
Yeah.
So practically part of the mindfulness is I'm putting it out there and I can see it and then I can let go of it because it's now outside of me. I can read it. I don't have to give it that chronic airtime in my head that I'm living with low grade stress all the time, wondering about, am I where I'm supposed to be? Have I got it right? All those kinds of things. And then again, having those wise people that you can bounce things off of. Obviously, you know, praying about it, lifting it up to the Lord and going like, show me the next step. That's it. Just the next step. Because again, a lot of times it's the running ahead of God and then getting frustrated because we think he's supposed to be making the paths clear. Meanwhile, he's going, hold on, you're off course. Yeah. I only wanted you to take that one step. So, you know, chasing, like, where's the peace? Because God will put the dreams in your heart, but he's also going to, like, there's the holy discontent of I still want the dream fulfilled, but also the peace and I can rest and this is where I'm supposed to be today. Holding that tension.
One of the best things, my mom, she didn't teach it to me. It's just we have a knack in our household for losing things. So things just disappear. And it's always when we need it the most. So it's like, where's my bank card? My bank card's missing. My driver's license is gone. Or even like small things, like we're trying to finish a project and we can't find the scissors or something ridiculous. And the minute we like stop looking and we stop, you know, trying to make our own plans for it, we're just like, oh, there it is. It's like the same place we looked 4 times. It's just suddenly there. So like we've both just like learned that, you know, sometimes all it takes is you just have to wait patiently and, you know, let your brain, like let your body catch up with the rest of you. And then you'll be ready to move the next step. And in saying that, how can we as church leaders, and even young people listening to this, how can we create an environment and a culture where we encourage the gradual and meaningful changes instead of like that instant gratification, that desire for the dream to be fulfilled now.
I think a big thing, and I mean, many of us have either read in part or fully, John Mark's book, the Ruthless Elimination of hurry, and looking at Jesus' example. Jesus acted out of rest. We act and do and do and do, and then think we need to rest, but we've done already, and now we want to rest. In saying that, I think what we're getting at is the intentionality of creating space. And we as church need to help young people have space to reflect. They fill space. We need to help them. Now remember, the difference for me, the Christian, is we empty so that the Lord can fill us. We don't empty for the sake of emptying. But what I'm getting at is to help young people help ourselves. I mean, I'm also I'm hyper. So it's to help them develop an understanding, a culture, a life rhythm where there's space to listen, to reflect. Even when we teach people about the Word of God, teach them to meditate, teach them to rest in the Word, to enjoy the Word, to sit in the Word, even fall asleep in the Word. But it's without, and I have to say this, is help them become comfortable being device-free, screen-free, techno-free, because it truly, for me, the older I get, I realize, and it's not just because I'm older, I just realize Jesus had so much space and so much time. He listened, he had space to reflect and look at the decisions he made, look at the team he chose, look at what he achieved in those 3 years, and look at his rhythm. And if we can help young people to discover, it's not a negative to be still. It's not a negative to wait. It's not a negative to reflect, to meditate, and simply to be in the presence of the Lord. And I'm saying it even without music and song, and I love that. But absolute quiet, to hear the Lord speak to you. And then you confront yourself. You meet him and you meet you. And for that to be a safe place. I think if we can teach young people that being with the Lord alone, and then in that being with yourself alone is safe. It's not scary. And you actually find the dreams that genuinely God has put in your heart and mind. You discover it because there's no more noise. There's not distraction. Yeah, maybe that's an older person. I never thought I'd saying that. But that's what I would want for young people. That's what I would want.
But I think our discomfort with being, as you just picking up on what you're saying, like the discomfort with sitting in our uncomfortable feelings or uncertainty or turmoil or what have you, like we're so primed and conditioned to numb and to not feel and to pick up a screen, be distracted. But then there's this general sense of, well, look at everyone around us. Why aren't people more spiritual, for example? But when you're staring at your phone, how much spirituality, how much connection, awareness of Jesus is there? But you're comparing yourself to all the other places that you're seeing on your social media, for example. Like, I think it feeds that discontent, which then we work harder to try to get the hit so that we don't feel that discomfort again. And so it's this like vicious cycle. So part of like in culture is working with comparison, naming comparison when it's coming up. I think, as you say, encouraging less use of devices and more normalizing the vulnerable spaces and holding space for discomfort. It's okay to wrestle. It's okay to have questions that aren't easily answered and can't be answered today or tomorrow. But it's okay to be asking them and to hold space for the feelings about it, and to pray into it together and that type of thing. We're very quick to want change now and growth now, but a lot of time it's the slow grow and the safe spaces that's held for it that allow the good roots to take place. So, that encourage that. Firstly, I think as leaders, taking the time to stop, look, and listen. Like a person knows when you're not engaged with them, when they're distracted, when they're when you're not present to them. So working on our own as leaders, ability to sit in stillness and to, to be present to ourselves and the Holy Spirit, then we can't take people where we're not and where we haven't been. So, yeah, part of I'm going to echo you in that rhythm, that healthy rhythm and that stillness and that presence is a critical culture when so much of the world is get me out of my presence into something that is more distracting and giving me that dopamine hit.
Yeah, I think as leaders, I think we have to echo what God did, or what Jesus did as an example. I think we just come out of that Christmas season, so we've kind of start thinking about, okay, this is what he's done for us. So I always think back to like the Lazarus story, and I think back to that, and I think in the receiving the news that Lazarus is sick, still saying this will not result in death, and then to wait 3 days. And then to go back and then to see God work in that situation and bring him back to the dead. Spoiler alert. And I think that I think it's just so important for us to realize that it's okay to identify that or trust in God that he's bringing the work in this. Then to mourn in it, in the sense. We have to understand that as leadership, we're going to be facing people that have dreams and visions, and not everything's going to happen. Not everything's going to come true. And it's a sad realization. Even if back in my 20s, I thought I was going to do so many things, to only look at myself now. And I'm so happy with where I am, but I'm sad of the dreams that died along the way. So getting to a place of trusting, being able to mourn what is gone, and ultimately seeing God work, not you work. As much as we feel like a lot of what we do in a spiritual context is like all work we put in, it's more work God does through us. And I think that as leaders, we are only there to display that. It's what God's given me through his word, through what he's doing in my life, through what he's bringing into my life in family and friends and conversations. But it's ultimately what he's going to do with that in me. And I'm really grateful for what he's able to do. So therefore, as a leader, we have to understand that the people we're talking with have dreams and things. So we trust that God will bring through. And even if it doesn't happen, we mourn with you. We go with you. We're not going to, like the Holy Spirit, we come alongside. And that includes the good times, the bad times, and ultimately he's there even in the great times when we see the resurrections of things in our lives and the new dreams that we are able to vision and new things that we are able to do going into the new year. And having a resolution in that sense then becomes a great and exciting thing because it ultimately comes from him, not from us. And I think that then brings us to a place as leaders that we can lead well, knowing that we trust, we've been able to mourn, and ultimately we see him work.
Okay, last question. What is one thing you've learned this year, so 2024, that you are wanting to take with you into 2025 as you continue like your own journey? What is one thing you've learned or experienced with God that you're wanting to take with you?
I think clarity for me, just this word clarity. I'm a visionary. At times I'm an older guy, but I'm wild. So the book Wild at Heart really speaks to me. And I've realized I got burnt a little bit this year. So I think what I've learned, and I thank the Lord that he's put us in my mind, that clarity is very important. In other words, for me, whether it be for me, clear boundaries, clear understanding of my role, clear understanding of the role of the people that work around me. When you appoint people in leadership, make it absolutely clear. I'm one of those, we're on an adventure, we'll find our way together, that kind of journey. And yes, Dave, it doesn't always work because then that comes and bites you. So one thing I take into 2025, is that right?
Yeah. You're right. No, you're right.
It's just, I want to be more clear. I want to hear God clearly, but I want to put vision clearly before the people. And expectations need to be clear for myself. And if people working with me or alongside me or however you want to look at it, that it's absolutely clear because it protects and it honors and it's safe then for me and it's safe for other people. And that's where I want to be. It goes often against the wild at heart and the living out of vision purely, that's enough, and passion. Now I've got to articulate. So I think maybe that word go with that, to articulate well. And in order to do that, you got to have clear vision, clear what God is saying, clear what you're seeing, clear what you want others to see, and just perhaps to last a little bit on that. Someone said to me this year, Dave, you sometimes are very clear in what you're saying, but it's what people are receiving that's sometimes where the clarity isn't. And that means you've got to work double hard. Sorry. Let me leave it there.
Clear as kind.
Yes, I was waiting for you to say it.
You're itching to say it.
I had a mug made that has clear as kind on it.
Oh,
now. I say every
well
mug.
done.
Come on.
Yeah. I think for me, just reflecting while you asked the question, firstly, my mind was just blank. And I'm like, what have I done this year? I think it was New Year's Day that we had our last family video chat with my gran before she passed away. And she asked my youngest what he was planning to do when he finished school. And he said, no, I don't know. And she said her phrase that she was known for is, don't worry, it will unfold. And when she said that, I was like, I need to get that tattooed. And I did. I did. Just before her birthday, that same month, I think it was a week later, whatever, in her handwriting. And that has been my touch point this year, is it will unfold. I like certainty. I like to know where I'm going. I like to feel in control. And it's really unsettling and painful for me to feel like that certainty or that control isn't necessarily in my hands, on the one hand. On the other hand, if I look at my core values, it's faith, vulnerability, and curiosity. And I can't have both. So it will unfold means that I can lean into faith. I can get curious about the things that I don't have certainty about, rather than trying to cling to some kind of control or manipulate to make myself feel like I've got my feet on solid ground, And that vulnerability keeps me out of judgment. Otherwise, when I'm trying to hold it all together and figure it out and whatever, I'm constantly playing judge and jury in my own head about my own life or circumstances or intentions or what's happening, what's not happening, but leaning into it will unfold, and taking myself out of having to drive everything and actually trusting the Lord with my life, even if I can't see what that looks like. So yeah, it is uncomfortable, but I know He will bring the clarity, which is His kindness.
Yeah. I think for me, two things is to listen more than I talk. One. I know. Yeah. Still learning, obviously. I'm taking it into the new year. But listen more than I talk. And also understand that I've got to, I think, to piggyback off of what you said, is the idea of making sure that vision is clear, but also understanding that mission doesn't, just because mission seems to be achieving goals doesn't mean that mission is aiding vision. So I think it's important that for as we go into the new year, is that idea of understanding what mission am I on, and is it actually benefiting the vision of what we're going for? If it isn't, then it has to be something we need to address. So I think it's being able to hear and listen and to stop and think, is what I'm doing ultimately what God's asked us to do, or what our vision for this community is, kind of thing.
What about you?
Oh, well done.
I think for me, it's I feel like it's something I learn every year and then I forget and then I relearn it. And it's just that I think that it's okay, like kind of what you were saying, it's okay to not know what's happening. It's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to just that whole, like, it's okay. Because I tend to run ahead and also be a little bit of a perfectionist. And when things fail, I'm like, oh, I don't like the word. I don't like failure. So then I just don't try. But I think like learning to be more courageous and that it is okay to fail, I think fundamentally has been a really big challenge that I've faced this year. And that I'm hoping to take, not failing into the next year, but the desire not to stop, almost, like not to just fall back, but to keep pushing ahead. Yeah. So that has been season 3 of CrossTalk, wrapped up all nice with a little bow. And we just want to thank you guys for joining us. It's been a season where we've done a whole lot of new things. We've obviously got the cameras going. You can see what we look like. And often we forget that we have the shootings on certain days, so we don't come as prepared. But yeah, we've also, so we just want to thank you. Like we've filmed this in segments, which we also, Karen would know from the last one, we did it all in a day. So we just want to thank you guys for giving up your time, and for having a heart for like the younger people of the community, and for those who listen, because we know, time is a sacrifice that we never seem to have enough of. And also just I think to everyone that's helped us. We don't know if you can see it, but this studio is a lot smaller in person, and all the windows and doors are closed for noise reasonings. So we are sweating in the December heat. But yeah, we do it all for the glory of God. So until we have a whole year planned out for you, thanks to Marcus, So we will see you back next season with some new faces. Maybe, maybe not. We shall see. Bye-bye.